In the early hours of January 30th of 1994, 4 Taco Bell employees were closing down their store for the night. But little did they know, a man was hiding inside the ceiling, getting ready to murder everyone. This is the Taco Bell Massacre. Hello, friend, and welcome to High Time Crime. My name's Joel, and on here I specialize in true crime and also being a true fashion statement. Have you ever seen something or someone so stylish? But today, we're going over the case of a guy named Courtney Mathews and what he did at a Taco Bell in 1994. You're going to learn about how a guy who, by all appearances, seemed to be a good person was in reality a cold-blooded killer. For our story, we're headed to Clarksville, Tennessee. In 1994, this city had exactly 87,393 people living here, and nearly 30 years later, it's almost doubled that amount with about 171,000 people. It's the 5th largest city in the state now and just continues growing. Starting in 1784, long before I was born. Or was it? Clarksville was established. Nowadays, well over 200 plus years later, things are a little bit different. If you decide to stop in this city, well, I think you'll find fun in whatever you choose. You could go to the Dunbar Cave and take a private cave tour. A bit spooky, but you better make sure to make a reservation because I heard they sell out quickly. If you're into drinking adult drinks, well, you could take a little trip to the Old Glory Distilling Co. and take another private tour, this time trying different drinks. Sweet. If antiquing is what you like to do in your free time, then head on down to Miss Lucille's where you can find all the gifts, furniture, and pottery you need. But sadly, none of those memorable options are the reason as to why we're in Clarksville today. Courtney B. Mathews was born on November 24th of 1974 to Godfrey Mathews, and I couldn't figure out his mother's name, but originally they lived in the Bronx, New York. There's not a ton of information about his childhood, and so I looked back as far as I could to find some things, and here's what I did find. Courtney's parents separated when he was a child, and they split houses, so he would have to travel back and forth between them. His childhood wasn't exactly bad, and by all accounts, he had pretty good parents. One time when Courtney was 6 years old, he was playing with firecrackers, and so his father, Godfrey, hit him. Godfrey felt awful about this and vowed to never hit him again, and he didn't. About 2 to 3 years later, Courtney lost his mother due to a combination of a stroke and cancer. And so Godfrey had to start taking full responsibility of Courtney. Courtney took his mother's death very hard, and every day for nearly 2 years, he would ask, "Where's mommy?" and "When is mommy coming home?" Which is very sad. By the time that Courtney got a little older, he went to Harry S. Truman High School and wrestled and lifted weights. He was a very popular guy who never got into much trouble, and he had a lot of friends, but after high school, that would all change. In 1992, after graduating from high school, Courtney was arrested for possession of stolen property, burglary, and disorderly conduct in the Bronx, and he pleaded guilty to disorderly conduct and received a conditional discharge. I'm not sure exactly what he did, but clearly this was just the beginning of something much, much worse. It was also around this time that Courtney and his father Godfrey had to move from an okay city apartment to a run-down neighborhood. Godfrey was a city paramedic, but then he was injured on the job, and so he had to go on disability. This whole thing seemed to be a pretty rough transition for the family. In July of this same year, it seemed like Courtney wanted to turn his life around and try to get on a good path. He enlisted in the United States Army and completed an Army mechanics course and became a helicopter mechanic. In December of 1992, he was stationed at Fort Campbell, which is right on the Kentucky-Tennessee border, and he enrolled into an Army nursing course. He was a private first class assigned to the 2nd Squadron, 17th Cavalry Regiment, with a few other soldiers. 4 of those soldiers did something bad around a very similar time. We'll get into that a bit later. But everything appeared to be going great for Courtney, and people genuinely really liked him. Courtney lived at a duplex with a few roommates. Neighbors of his said that he was a very friendly guy who just so happened to like his music a little too loud. If his neighbors ever complained about the music being too loud, though, Courtney would immediately turn it down and apologize. A few times, the police had to be called because there was always parties going on at the duplex where he lived, but it seems like nothing too crazy ever happened, and there was people going in and out of this place all the time. There was a convenience store around the corner from where Courtney lived, and he would go in there several times a week to buy cigarettes. The clerk that worked there said that he was well-mannered and liked to joke around. On December 22nd of 1993, one of Courtney's good friends he knew for 11 years, named Fitz, purchased a 9mm handgun for him. This same day, Courtney bought some ammo for it, and from here on out, he carried it everywhere he went. He also decided to shave the serial number off. The reason Fitz bought Courtney a gun was because Courtney wanted it for home security. Another friend of his named Sean also loaned him a shotgun and some shells for some reason. Around this time, Courtney was also dating a woman named Kendra Corley. Not much, if any, information is available about their relationship, though. Courtney also apparently previously had a wife named Jessica, but once again, the information about her is incredibly scarce. What we're going to talk about next is the few weeks leading up to what occurred. On January 17th of 1994, Courtney crashed into a Clarksville police car while he was driving a rental car. Once again, I'm not sure what happened or why he crashed, but this ended up being a big problem for him. The car was a red Ford Tempo, and the estimated cost to repair the damage was around $3,200. From this day forward, Courtney was really depressed and feeling down. He couldn't afford to pay to fix the car, and he was really in need of money. So he decided to get a part-time job somewhere, but deep down, his intentions were bad. One place that Courtney applied at, and they decided to give him a chance, was Taco Bell. It was located in Clarksville, which is like a 20-minute drive from Fort Campbell. On January 19th of 1994, this Taco Bell's assistant manager, Deanne Kellett, hired Courtney as a fast food handler and dishwasher, and she gave him a tour of the restaurant. Courtney asked a bunch of questions that, with a little bit of knowledge of the situation, are off-putting. He asked about the structure of the building, the after-hour procedures that regarded employees who were off-duty, and he also asked about what employees did when they closed the restaurant. Courtney asked Deanne if he could get a key to exit one of the doors that wasn't normally used, and also asked if there were security cameras inside of the restaurant. He also questioned the accessibility to the roof and asked if anything was kept inside of the drop ceiling and how much weight it would hold. Deanne answered each and every one of these questions and also gave him a key to the door. But I don't think anyone could have predicted the reasons as to why he was asking all those questions or why he wanted a key to the door. About 3 days later, on January 21st of 1994, Supposedly, a party was held at a trailer park that was close to the city. I'll touch on why I say supposedly a bit later, as it's a bit confusing and a lot of hearsay. Courtney Mathews was at this party, and so was his girlfriend and a few friends or acquaintances or whatever. He decided to say in front of a few people some pretty interesting things. These people were named David Housler Jr., Kevin Tween, and Box Train, or a guy named Charlie Brown. Not that one. But these four guys were talking about committing crimes, and specifically robberies. David at first was talking about how a week before he committed a robbery outside of a store. He was also a part of the army and lived at the same base as Courtney. Well, during this conversation, Courtney brought up robbing his local place of work, saying he'd go in and 187 the witnesses, which was a term derived from the California Police Code for homicide. David was apparently very fond of this idea and egged Courtney on about it. This developed a bond. Now, before I continue, I just want to say there's some discrepancies down the line with this David character and his involvement. But anyways, on Friday, January 28th of 1994, a few days before this rampage happened, Courtney was working at Fort Campbell in the mailroom. A coworker of his named Sean was there as well, and Courtney asked Sean some weird questions. He asked Sean about the safe inside of the mailroom and if someone could get inside of it by shooting it. After Sean told him yeah, Courtney then left the mailroom and looked back at Sean with a smile on his face, more like a smirk, and he then said that something big was going to happen that weekend, and something absolutely did. On January 29th of 1994, Courtney Mathews clocked into work at 2 p.m. at the Taco Bell. This particular day, for some reason, was the chosen day, and it was definitely going to be one to remember. Things were going normal for all of the employees, or so it seemed. The employees that were there at the time were 22-year-old Kevin Campbell, 22-year-old Angela Wyatt, 24-year-old Marcia Klopp, and 39-year-old Patricia Price. Marcia Klopp was the evening manager this night, and it was only her second time working alone. At 7:39 p.m., Courtney took a lunch break, and then clocked back into work at 8:12 p.m. Within about an hour, he finished his shift and clocked out at 9:11 p.m. He lived about 4 to 5 miles away in the duplex with a few roommates. One was named Carl Ward and his wife Shanti. Courtney left work and arrived to the duplex at about 9:30 that night. He went into his room to get changed and grabbed a few things. He dressed into 2 layers of clothes, pretty much wearing all black with a trench coat. He then grabbed some latex gloves, a bowling ball bag, and then got ready to leave and said, just in case the cops stop him, he's going bowling. Then he asked Carl's wife, Shanti, if he could borrow a black bag, and she said yes. So he packed the black bag with a shotgun, a 9mm handgun, another handgun, and a bunch of ammo. So Courtney told him that he's going to Nashville to sell the weapons and asked Carl to wipe his prints from them. Going to sell weapons at 10 o'clock at night. Next, Courtney pulled out his wallet and removed his driver's license, bank card, and a few other papers. He then left the house with an evil plan in his mind, and he said, "Pay attention, people. You won't be seeing these clothes no more." Courtney's next stop was Taco Bell, and it wasn't to get a Crunchwrap Supreme. He went back to where he worked, and at about 11:15ish, he was inside the store. Someone actually saw him walking inside the back, but it was just a random person. One of Courtney's coworkers, named Jelaine Walker, who luckily worked from 7 p.m. to midnight, saw Courtney inside the restaurant at about 11:30-ish, and she was a bit confused. She saw him crouching behind a trash can in the dining area, and she said, "I thought you were gone." Courtney said to her, "I am gone. You don't see me." Next, he snuck into the men's bathroom and opened up a ceiling tile and climbed inside of it and just hid there for a few hours. At some point, around a half hour before this tragic occurrence, somehow, I'm thinking probably with a cell phone, Courtney called his father, Godfrey. Godfrey said, "Hey buddy, why haven't I heard from you?" To which Courtney replied, "Oh Dad, I've been thinking about you. I was going to call you." Godfrey said that Courtney sounded fine on the phone and he told him to call his grandmother. But what he actually did next is appalling. At about 1:45 a.m., the employees were closing down shop. One of the other shift managers, named John Ballard, stopped by the drive-thru window to get some food and check on Marcia Klopp. She was the evening manager this night, and it was her second time working alone, and so John just wanted to make sure she was all good. He talked to her, and she told him that they were very busy this night and weren't able to close the drive-thru window until about 1:30 a.m., and that they were running behind, and it'd be like 3:30 to 4 a.m. before they left. Within about 15 minutes, John left the Taco Bell, and right after, tragedy struck. The exact sequence or timeline of events wasn't released, but basically, Courtney at some point got down from the ceiling in the men's bathroom, and then he walked out and shot Kevin Campbell, Angela Wyatt, Marcia Klopp, and Patricia Price. It wasn't just once or twice that he shot them. It was about 4 to 7 shots each person. It's just so awful. But he then shot the safe to break inside of it and stole about $3,000. He left $700 in a different money box though. Courtney did a pretty bad job at cleaning up. He didn't really. All he did was just throw a bunch of items into a trash can out back. After that, he left the Taco Bell and went home like nothing ever happened. On the way there, he got rid of a bunch of items that he used, but not very well. I'm not sure what exact time Courtney got home, but it was around 4:30 to 7 a.m. He then slept until about 9 a.m. Meanwhile, over at the Taco Bell, at around 7:25 a.m., the other shift manager, John Ballard, who just visited the drive-thru a few hours before, arrived to open the restaurant. When he got there, he saw a cardboard box in the drive-thru window and immediately started thinking that something was off. He then noticed that all of the employees' cars were still in the parking lot. John then walked inside of the Taco Bell and looked down and saw one of the employees' bodies lying on the ground. He immediately ran out of the restaurant, locked the door behind him, and called 911. John waited for the officers to arrive to let them into the restaurant, and what they found was absolutely gruesome. 4 innocent people murdered and $3,000 missing. A sergeant called all of the employees to let them know what happened, and one of those employees was Courtney Mathews. He was asked where he was during this incident, and he told the sergeant he was about 150 miles away at a nightclub called Midnight at the Oasis. Well, back at his house, after getting off the phone with the sergeant, Courtney apparently broke down crying. Shanti, his roommate Carl's wife, talked to Courtney in the morning after the shootings, and he told her that his squad leader just called and said that the Taco Bell got robbed last night and that he was going to go check and see if Patricia was okay. Shanti said, however, that she didn't hear the phone ring before Courtney said that. But Courtney then left the house and did who knows what for about an hour and a half. After this, he returned home and talked to Shanti again. This time, he apologized for not returning her black bag, and he explained to her a reason as to why. Courtney told Shanti that the night before he was in Nashville and got robbed. Whoever robbed him took the bag, his guns, his jacket, and his wallet. I think Shanti was probably a little concerned by this, given what just happened at the Taco Bell. But what really concerned her is what and how much Courtney knew and told her after this. He said to her, well, whoever did it, they went into the Taco Bell before it closed and went into the men's restroom and got up in the ceiling. Shanti started to doubt that theory because she thought that there was no way that the ceiling would hold enough weight. But Courtney responded to her by saying, if you get along the wall area, it would hold the weight of a person being up there. Courtney then said the safe was shot open with a shotgun, and whoever did it went out through the back door because it's not locked with a key. It just latches, and the last thing he said was that a 9mm handgun and shotgun were used during the robbery, and around 30 shots were fired. Wow. He got all of that information by talking to the detectives within an hour and a half? Suspicious? A bit later into the day, Shanti saw a press conference about what happened at the Taco Bell, and so she decided to confront Courtney about it and his involvement. He told her, if I did it, I wouldn't have left any money, and then he told Shanti that the victims would give up the money without any hesitation. I'm guessing that's the reason why he left the $700. Courtney also just so happened to know that the panic buttons for the security system weren't functioning at this time. So let's get to the investigation. Well, agents were called to collect evidence, and here's what they found. Inside the restaurant were the bodies of all the employees working that night. The safe and manager's office were broken into and ransacked. For some reason, a ceiling panel was broken and hanging down in the women's restroom, and in the men's restroom, a ceiling panel was pushed over all of the rest of the panels, revealing an opening. Investigators then took a heater vent that was moved for forensic testing. They found 24 cartridge cases, all from a 9mm handgun and some shotgun shells. Both of these were used to shoot the safe, but only the handgun was used for murder. The police also went to the club that Courtney said he was at, or Midnight at the Oasis. They interviewed about 40 employees and people who were there that night, and not one person recalled seeing him. A guy named David was working at a McDonald's that was close to the Taco Bell when he was emptying the trash for the night or the early morning. In the dumpster, he found a few bullets, shotgun shells, some coins, a black wallet, and a black leather glove. He decided to take the ammo and change with him, but when he learned about the murders, he returned everything to his store manager, who then gave them to the police. The weird thing is, the chamber markings on the bullets collected didn't match the ones from the Taco Bell. But regardless, the police were on a fast track to figuring out who was responsible, and it wouldn't take them very long. On February 1st of 1994, Courtney's roommate Carl came home to find Courtney very depressed. He randomly gave Carl a very emotional hug and then went to his room. Carl called out for Courtney, but he didn't respond, and so Carl then went into his room. It was here that he found Courtney with a box cutter in his wrist. Courtney said to Carl, "I don't deserve to live. I ain't shit." Carl was trying to help him and bandage up his wounds when Courtney then said that he hurt 4 people, that he killed 4 people. This same day, Carl called the police and Courtney was arrested, but he denied all responsibility and claimed it wasn't him. Eventually, his case would go to trial, and I'll tell you why it was very obviously him, but then we'll talk about some confusing things. Investigators ended up finding some evidence that Courtney tried to get rid of underneath of a bridge. This included some clothing, latex gloves, and other items, one of which was a black trench coat type jacket. There was blood on this jacket, and so the police did some forensic testing and found out that the blood was Kevin Campbell's. The investigators interviewed Carl Ward and showed him the jacket and asked him if he'd ever seen Courtney wearing it. He had seen Courtney wearing it before, and in fact, this was the exact same one that Courtney was wearing the night of the murders. Additionally, investigators searched Courtney's car and found almost $2,600 in a bowling bag in the back seat. They also found out that one day before the murders, Courtney had asked a manager named Sherry if exiting through the back door would set off an alarm, to which she said no. Earlier, we talked about how the investigators also took a vent cover. Well, the forensic testing that they did ended up coming back, and they found fingerprints matching to that of Courtney Mathews. A decent amount of people testified at his trial, and it was very obvious that he was responsible. In June of 1996, about 2.5 years after Courtney's rampage, he was officially found guilty on 4 counts of first-degree murder, and he's now serving life without parole. Originally, prosecutors tried for the death penalty and were unsuccessful. So as for now, Courtney Mathews is in prison and never getting out, which is definitely for the best. But now we're going to talk about some weird things in this case that kinda confused me. So earlier, I talked about a guy named David Housler Jr. and Courtney and their apparent meeting. Well, David Housler Jr. seems to be some sort of chronic liar, and I'm not entirely sure why he implicated himself into this case or if he was actually involved. Around the time that Courtney was arrested and had court cases going on, David Housler Jr. was claiming that he was involved after being arrested for committing a robbery, and he actually made this a written statement. He said that he was the getaway driver for Courtney and that a few other people were involved. David also claimed that him and Courtney were at parties on a few different occasions. Once on January 21st of 1994, and then again on January 29th. He said that they reiterated their plan about what was going to happen and a bunch of other things. David literally had an entire story about what apparently happened. But investigators found out that there were a lot of discrepancies. They didn't really touch down on what was real and what wasn't. Supposedly, David and Courtney were at a party together on January 22nd, not the 21st. This was said by Kendra Corley, or Courtney's girlfriend. She said that she dropped him off on the 22nd. David had a few people testify at his trial for and against him, some claiming that they saw him with Courtney at these parties, and other people testified claiming the opposite. It was also found that Courtney worked at Taco Bell on the night of the 21st, and so there was pretty much no way he went out to party. And for some reason, he also decided not to testify at David's trial. But regardless, in December of 1997, David Housler was found guilty on 4 counts of felony murder and imposed a punishment of life in prison. He was now claiming he had no responsibility for any of the crimes that Courtney committed and that they barely knew each other. For years, David Housler tried to get a new trial and was constantly denied until in 2010, 16 years after being in prison, a judge vacated his convictions and ordered him a new trial. He was then released on bail in October of that same year, and by 2014, he was a completely free walking man. As to why he implicated himself if he wasn't involved in the case, well, because apparently he thought it would help him get an easier sentence for the robbery he committed that he was supposedly bragging to Courtney about. This robbery landed him in prison for years, and he ended up serving that time while he was in prison from 1994 to 2010. The only thing was, though, that the robbery he committed was on January 23rd of 1994. So it was after he supposedly met Courtney at these parties, and he talked about a robbery that he committed before. I don't exactly understand the thought process there or why he would do that. But Courtney never specifically came out and stated that David wasn't involved. Another thing is that Courtney was in the same unit as 4 other soldiers who were charged in connection of the murder of another Fort Campbell soldier named Darren Christopher. Not saying that he's involved in this, I just find it a bit bizarre. So there's just a few mysteries that are left unanswered. But regardless, this tragic day left many families broken. Kevin Lee Campbell was 22 years old and born on May 5th of 1971. He was married to a woman named Lori, and they had a child together, a daughter named Taylor, who was born 2 weeks before this happened. Kevin was intelligent and enjoyed reading and journaling. He believed that one day someone would find his journal and a great philosophical book with his thoughts would be published. In college, he studied philosophy and political science at Austin Peay State University. He was a funny guy who also had a serious side. Angela Renee Wyatt was 22 years old and born on January 11th of 1972. She was a student at Dragowans Junior College and had a husband named Donald, a son, and a daughter. Angela, or Renee as she liked to go by, was very family-oriented and loved her kids. She had quit high school but earned her GED, and in the same month she was murdered, she enrolled in computer classes at the junior college. Her life was just starting to fall into place before it was violently ripped away. Marcia Ann Klopp was 24 years old and born on July 1st of 1969. She was a shift manager at Taco Bell and married to a man named Robert, and she had 1 boy and 2 daughters. Growing up, Marcia was one of 8 kids and always took care of her brothers and sisters when they were young. She'd always be there for them. She graduated from Northwest High School in 1987 and enjoyed caring for older people. Marcia was a certified nursing assistant who worked for some time at a care center. She had went to Minnesota for 2 years for schooling and took a certified nursing assistant test and passed 3rd in the state. The only thing was, it was a bit hard to find a job in the healthcare field, and so to help keep her family together, Marcia got a job at Taco Bell in August of 1993, and she just got promoted to being a shift manager. She was a hardworking mother, wife, and friend. Patricia Mae Price was 39 years old and born on November 26th of 1954. She had a husband named Michael, 3 young boys, and 2 daughters. She was a very caring and loving mother, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, and she also had dreams of being a nurse. She graduated from Austin East High School and moved all around when she was a child living in bad neighborhoods. Patricia moved to the area with her children in hopes of finding a better life after she married the pastor's son Michael, and he showed her around town, and she loved it. I genuinely hope that they're all resting peacefully, and almost 30 years later, their families have been able to find some closure. As for why Courtney did what he did, we can only assume that it was because of the money that he needed to repair the rental car that he crashed. But he never came out and explicitly gave a reason as to why. So there's a lot of room for debate there. He did also try to do a similar thing that David Housler did and get out of jail, but it didn't work because he was obviously responsible. Also, Taco Bell ended up setting up the Clarksville Children's Memorial Fund and also donated $55,000 to help the family's children. They also paid for all the funeral expenses and arranged for grief counseling for all the victims' families and their co-workers, and vowed to spend millions of dollars to post armed guards at some of their locations that stay open late. I wonder if they're still doing that, and I just wanted to throw that in there. But anyways, thank you for watching this episode of High Time Crime. If true crime is your thing, then please subscribe and hit the like button because that's all we do. I also have a second account with my brother named Horrifying where we tell stories about everything paranormal. This includes true crime, mysteries, and things that are just downright spooky. I'd greatly appreciate if you subscribed to that too. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care, friend.